All right, it's ENTP Duelist. I'm here with my retail friend, Retroplay Games, and we're talking about the Merlin deck, whether it was good enough or not. Johnny, you're more bullish in this game. I'm more bearish. Like for those who don't know the stock market, bullish is when you want to buy a stock, and bearish is when you want to like kind of avoid risky markets. So why don't you go ahead, since you're the more positive outlooker on this, explain why people should get the Merlin recollection, why it's good.
So, first of all, I feel like the title of the video was a little disingenuous. So I wanted to actually debate like all the talking points that you
Okay,
had
okay,
in your most
okay.
recent video.
No, no, 1 second. Okay, there's two topics of this. The first is the Merlin itself, and then the second was it the worst TCG product ever? And uh, I know you're against getting views here apparently, but let's go with the more boring topic first. Did you like the Merlin deck? Like, how was it?
So, from a purely objective, like the performance of the deck standpoint, it's not like optimal out of the box.
Okay.
And coming at it from I didn't really look too much into the contents of the deck and like prepare to play it before I opened it up. It was like, okay, we're doing this release event, I'm going into it cold, and I feel like it alongside a lot of the recollection deck products, like obviously it's not a fully competitive tuned deck right out of the box. Like you get the suite of cards to complete the play sets and stuff, and obviously there's going to be an optimal ratio of what to change and using specifically that card pool of things to change that can make it better. But I just played it stock out of the box, and I think every deck that we've had in the Recollection series has had some weaker points that need adjustment using the greater card pool. So purely from a performance standpoint, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just it's a new product, so we're getting brand new mechanics, like using the shimmer counters, and obviously there's missing pieces. Like there's a lot of preparation counters and stuff in there that are required for different cards. Like you're going to want the Sadies and all that kind of stuff. But again, objectively speaking, it's not a fully tuned competitive deck out of the box. And I think at least the vast majority of Grand Archive players at this point understand that that's not what they're getting in a recollection product. That's not what it's designed to be. So what were you, I guess, what were you expecting to get out of it? How, as a person who's, I believe you got Sylvie, you got Tristan. I don't think, and then you got Guoja. So you've had every run of recollection so far.
Yeah.
Like, what were you expecting out of that product? What is it that you think it should be that it's not?
Okay. First off, I really want to emphasize this to people here that the recollection deck situation reminds me of, remember that blonde girl from what's that show, The Boys, and she got the plastic surgery and everyone's making fun of her and then have everybody gas her up. That's like the recollection decks. They were advertised as competitive out of the box when Tristan and Sylvie were released. Okay, and then what happened? We hit Guoja and Daochan, and people were like, whoa, these are mid tier. I mean, these are just supposed to be something like a building based off of. And now we've hit the low point with Merlin, where people are like, well, it's just a starter deck with some extras. What
But
are we
so, what
talking
deck
about
was fully
here?
competitive out of the? So first of all, I don't think they were ever billed as fully competitive right out of the box,
I'm gonna
because
say
you even
Sylvie. I'm
said in
gonna
the
say Sylvie
video.
and Tristan were. I mean, by some YouTubers they were. I mean, that's all I'm gonna say. If you watch
Okay,
some
so
old reviews,
Sylvie needed a playset of dungeon guides as well as Quicksilver Grail.
Grail at the
I'm not
time,
sure if Covenant of Thorns was included in that deck or not, but she needed that. And the ratios of the slimes and all the other cards in there had to be tweaked. Like just straight out of the box, it wasn't a good deck. But what it did was introduce new mechanics and a new strategy into the game using slimes. And that was the same with the Tristan deck. Like, I think you would agree, as a person who plays Tristan on the regular at our locals, you need Sadie to make that deck work, right? So it wasn't billed as competitive right out of the box. It's just here's a new foundational product that introduces some different mechanics. So with Tristan, we got the ominous shadow tokens. Again, with Sylvie, we get you can use any advanced element slime at level 3, and we get the spirit of slimes, to kind of play around people using the baubles in their material decks and stuff. They introduce a new foundation and a new strategy that gives in my opinion, the more experienced player is a stepping stone to explore new opportunities for um, ways to play Grand Archive. And I wouldn't say that it's billed as A, competitive right out of the box, or B, as a product that's aimed at new players. I think that's something that you talked about as well. It's not for new players.
I don't see who this product's for, but I want to address your points for Sylvie first off, okay? Quicksilver Grill at the time was $25. I'm cheap, okay? But even I would pay 25 for a one of card. The second thing was the dungeon guide situation. The event packs back then were better because it was still the gold and silver event packs, so it was easier for a new player to grind and get the dungeon guides than it is now.
So we didn't have dungeon guides in the event packs at the time with Sylvie. It
It
was,
was easier to pull value to trade for them. Like you could
but
pull
then,
hollows and the divine relics a lot easier when it was gold and silver, and you still had the constructed packs, whatever that. What was that stupid thing for sealed? You had the sealed packs you could still get, like the sealed kits that came with the packs of um, Dawn of Ashes and came with the packs of Fractured Crown.
yeah, so there was the sealed play kit that we got. You're right. Like the event packs from Fractured Crown, which like, we're well beyond that at this point because it was Mercurial Heart where we got Sylvie and Tristan.
You could
So
still get those.
those,
Those were still available and they were cheap. So like it was easier to pull value. That's all I'm trying to argue here. It was easier to pull the trade value. And I do agree with you, okay? I agree with you that Sylvie was not out of the box straight up competitive, but she was a lot more complete. And one of the main problems with Grand Archive that we still have to this day is there's no good, like there's not enough people distributing it in large enough numbers for singles. So you hit the situation where it's like in other games, if I want to, like, let's say Yu-Gi-Oh, okay? You know what? Let's say One Piece. Let's say One Piece, something relatively newer. If I want to get the cards I'm missing from a deck, it's harder to get a bunch of cheaper cards from one place, and then if you don't, you have to pay extra shipping. Like you're tacking on these extra costs. Now the Sylvie thing, because you only need a dungeon guide, that was pretty. Let's be real here. If you order a dungeon guide from a store, you could probably get the Covenant of Thorns and Gaia's Blessing. Those are fairly easy cards to come by. Even today, they're still pretty easy to come by. They're just like $1 or $2.
sure. And I think the vast majority of cards in Grand Archive are actually relatively inexpensive, minus a few staples. So we're talking like Dungeon Guide in the case of Tristan, or even Merlin now. We're talking Sadie. Again, it's elementally dependent. So for anybody out there that's new to Grand Archive or not familiar with it, I guess it's probably beyond you at this point because this is a channel dedicated to that. But there's multiple ways to build each deck, right? So Merlin comes out of the box. The new Merlin deck comes out of the box with water, but there's wind and fire. And each of those elements also have a package of staples that vary in price depending on the competitive viability of a particular element at any given point in the meta.
Everyone I
So
talk
Quicksilver Grail was never $25. That card I think bottomed out at like $50 because everybody saw what it was. It was amazing. It was still highly played even before Sylvie and everything like that. Like that card has always been in high demand.
I don't
And
remember it
Dungeon
being
Guides, I think,
I remember it being 25 at one point. You need to remember that Fracture Crown was way overprinted and people would just crack the case for the CSR, push all the rest of the boxes away.
yeah, Fractured Crown definitely was the most overprinted set in Grand Archive, and I think a
It
lot of
wasn't
games suffer from that problem where there's always one point in a game's lifetime where the company pushes it too far and they make too much of it. So like fractured crown boxes for the longest time I could get from distribution absolutely dirt cheap. And it's not healthy for the game to have that much product cheaply available. Like I'm not sure if what you know about Star Wars Unlimited. I just got done with doing that at the store and they completely destroyed the value of their sealed product with some other choices that aren't necessarily the same thing as what Grand Archive is doing. But there's definitely a healthy balance of having enough product available at a price point that's not losing stores money and also having it be a desirable product to open. And Grand Archive has never had product that's undesirable to open because there's always CSRs and all these cool chase cards and stuff to get in every single set. So people are cracking tons of products. There is tons of availability of singles out there, minus what we saw with Lost Providence in the latest set here. Like, and they addressed that right away. So to Weeb's credit, like people in the community were like, "Bro, we can't get this card." And Weebs is like, "Hey, we weren't going to include this in the reprint set that's coming out next year, but now we are because we hear you and we want these cards to be accessible."
Well, I was just bringing. I didn't say it was good that Fractured Crown had been overprinted. I was just saying that it was cheaper. I'm pretty sure it actually was 25. That was my whole point. It was not 50. It was not the same as GCR. And
Yeah, it's kind of followed that trajectory
now it is, but
since it was introduced. I would argue even since it's always been a really good card. It's not like one of those sleeper divine relics where people are like, and then all of a sudden, like Cheshire Cat. I was selling Cheshire Cats at $17 when they first came out, and then all of a sudden now it's like $80 a copy because turns out it's good, right? The Quicksilver Grail has always been considered a good card since it was introduced.
all right, you asked me what I expected from this deck. You know what I expect from this deck? Okay, I need you people to understand. It's still $80. When people are like, "Oh, it's not supposed to be this," $100 in other trading card games will get you a budget deck. Like like if you can't take the heat, don't go in the kitchen. If Weebs cannot produce a competitive out of the box deck, then they shouldn't be releasing them for $80. That's all. That's like my main point. Why is Dungeon Guide still not in this deck? She's had her time. It would help out. You're supposed to this deck. Okay, Merlin really needs to get to level 3. At least base Tristan out of the box, could slice and dice. You had incapacity and slice and dice, and that could win you the game. Like we've all been there. You're not prepared enough, and you get slice and diced, and that's that, right?
So
And
Merlin is an assassin class, though. In theory, she could essentially do the same thing.
yeah, but she doesn't
It's
have it
her
in the
advanced
deck.
element that it's getting to Crux that you're saying we don't need to get to Crux, right? She can slice and dice, incapacitate. Like Merlin
But
has
those aren't in the
access to
deck.
all
But
that
those
stuff
weren't
with
in the
assassin
deck.
too.
You have to get the slice
No,
and
but
dice
those
and
are.
incapacitate.
But everybody should be having those cards at this point. Slice and dice was printed as uncommon in its latest iteration. Like there's tons of that card out there. It's not like we're being gate kept by slice and dice, and that deck can't do the same thing that you're saying Tristan could do right out of the box. It doesn't need to get to level 3. I would argue that's the same thing for Merlin too. If you want to get to Crux, absolutely, you're going to need the dungeon guides. Again, you're going to want Sadies for the prep counter shenanigans, all that kind of stuff. But the fundamentals of the two decks are the same.
Yeah, but the thing is, okay, look, I'm just saying. Do you not agree that Dungeon Guide should be in these decks? Like, is it really that big of a deal for a card that's been out since the start of the game to be in an $80 deck that wants you to get to level 3?
I think that these I think you're looking at what a starter product might potentially optimally contain, and these aren't aimed as starter products. So these are aimed at enfranchised players that most likely are going to have access to dungeon. Like I think everybody in our meta, even the casual people in our meta, have dungeon guides at this point in time. So I think that's a non-issue.
I mean, I think it's an issue. I think we have because this happened. This is how what I saw happen at the Guoja and Dao Chan when we did those recollection decks. We did the tournament. We had two people that hadn't played for a while come by. They bought the deck. They played. They never came again. When Merlin came out, we had one new guy try it out. Where is he? Like this is still an introduction for a lot of people, and you're talking about $80. Like I think people expect more bang for their buck. And that's where I'm coming from, where I feel like Merlin should be at least. Sorry, any recollection deck should at least be on par with the slime deck. I don't think I'm asking much.
So let's talk about what you do get in the deck, though. So we don't get the dungeon guides. Boo! We're not getting $100 worth of staple cards in our
Hold
product.
on, hold
But
on.
what we are
They're
getting,
gonna
we're getting a
drop.
brand new deck. We're getting exclusive cards in a brand new deck. Again, we're getting introduced to a brand new strategy. Merlin specifically comes with the two D10 dice counters so that you can track your sheen counters. You get an entire playset of cards. So, other games, if you want to get a deck ready to go, like let's say Yu Gi Oh!, for example, you have to buy 3 copies of the structure deck, which now I do understand does not equate to the cost of a recollection deck, but you also just get the decks and that's it. And even the more recent Chronicles deck that they put out, the Fallen and the Virtuous, that was considered a premium product. Those decks were considerably more expensive. You still had to buy 3 copies of it to get everything you wanted. Whereas in the Recollection deck, we're getting an entire play set of cards. So any card that's available in the deck, you get another pack that completes the play set. You get 3 booster packs of the latest set. Don't see Yu-Gi-Oh doing that or any other game doing that. You also get the box itself as a card storage box, and it's a nice box. Like it's not like some flimsy, you tear open the structure deck and throw the thing in the trash and you're done with it. Like it's a nice box. You get card dividers for storing your cards, and you get the sweet Dragon Shield art sleeves. So like, yeah, the cost of the deck is up there, but you're also getting a lot of supplementary stuff that you don't get in any other game. I think that the Grand Archive Recollection decks are something that other TCGs should be taking a look at and looking to emulate, to be honest with you. You get so much value.
I'm gonna disagree there, and I do want to address this point because people were arguing that comparing Grand Archive to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh isn't fair. I want to push back on that idea before I begin here, and that Pokemon wasn't always scalped, fly off the shelves popular. They were still doing the ballerina decks. Like when I joined, Amanda, I bought my wife one of the X and Y fire themed booster boxes. We bought the Charizard EX deck, and that deck was used by the world champion with one card changed from it. And as for Yu-Gi-Oh, people are saying, well, you can't compare Yu-Gi-Oh because the boxes of Yu-Gi-Oh for stores are like $30. That Yu-Gi-Oh's been around for 25 years. It reprinted like that since the very start of the game. It has other problems. That's why those boxes went down to $30 for stores. It's because it's boring to play. Not because of all the reprints. It's just boring. So a lot of people aren't going to be like, you're not going to have as big of an audience buying the boxes. With Yu-Gi-Oh, if you bought 3 structure decks and you were a new player, a lot of the times for a lot of decks like Light Sworns, Dark World, Monarch didn't use the extra deck at all, and you got a complete deck, and it added to your deck roster right away, and it was super fun. Now, yes, Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh's cost. Like people get confused about like what makes Yu-Gi-Oh expensive. It's the extra deck in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like it's usually extra deck monsters. Yeah, some things come out like I don't know any of the new trap cards, but you know what I'm talking about. There is some new main deck draw spells and stuff that are expensive, but they get reprinted very quickly. So Yu-Gi-Oh is also weird because if you play the game, you get rewarded by having an easier time getting cheaper cards in the reprints. Because after a reprint, like something like Max C was reprinted, and then after the Hanzo tin was all soaked up, that card went up in value again, right? Now I'm not saying
See, I
I,
think you're kind of dating yourself here with your your references to what you thought was meta at the time
okay,
when
look,
you're playing, because
okay, look.
Yu-Gi-Oh's got a lot of issues.
Yu-Gi-Oh has a lot of issues now. I'm just saying that for like most of its life it didn't, and it's not fair to point at the last couple years. Like I don't have a problem with people bringing up the glory days of Magic and how Magic ran their system before they got Hasbro. So like I'm gonna allow people to say that, I think that people should be looking at these ancient games. Let's be real, these games have been around. If you were in prison, you are out of prison and these games are still around. It's been around for life, dude. That's a lot. Like 25 years, a lot. And then we're having people say, "Oh, don't look at them. Don't. What other business other than trading cards would you say, hey, don't look at this successful business. Just run it completely differently." And you know what else? I've got one other thing to say before I let you talk. The people that one of the YouTubers who were arguing hard against me about this and brought up the points I just brought up, I read, you know what he says? He says he allows people to run proxy cards in his tournament. Now, I think I've read a lot of tournaments are letting you run proxy cards. If your tournament is running proxy cards, fundamentally, you shouldn't be arguing with me because then there's something wrong with the system. If you don't agree with the system enough that you're going to allow proxies in your official, tournaments, not store champs, not major things, but you're like official locals, something's wrong with the game. You know?
So, okay, so let's talk about Pokemon first, because I think Pokemon is a completely different animal from other TCGs. And the reason why is because there's maybe a handful of cards in any given product that are actually value. And the vast majority of the stuff that gets opened would be considered bulk, right? So, like, maybe there's some playable staples. I haven't looked at meta Pokemon in quite some time, actually, since you and I played. Like, and people rip so much Pokemon product to get those chase cards that the value of everything else is basically zero. So building competitive decks and playing meta decks is dirt cheap. Pokemon does a great job of making sure that the most meta relevant cards in the game are not the ones that are the most highly collectible. So, let's the latest set we get new Charizard, right? Charizard's bad. Like, he's bad in the game. You don't play Charizard, you collect the Charizard. So that card isn't expensive for people to get and put in their decks. All the stuff that you want to actually play with, dirt cheap for Pokemon. That being said, Pokemon is, in my opinion, and I think the vast majority of people are going to agree, it's a children's game, right? Like, that game is aimed at children. Not to say that it's not fun to play as an adult and that there's not adult leagues and adults don't play it, but the game itself and even its mechanics, like, there's no interaction in Pokemon. I don't think it holds a candle to Grand Archive in terms of, me personally, my enjoyment out of playing the game. And I don't think that Grand Archive is trying to be a Pokemon. So, again, the collector market of Pokemon and the way people treat that product is, like, separates it totally into a different league of its own. So let's talk about Yu-Gi-Oh now. Yu-Gi-Oh has a lot of problems in terms of playability as well. So it's billed as a children's game, but the game is so unbelievably complex at this point, which is something that I see people talking about Grand Archive, but Yu-Gi-Oh is 100 times worse. It's really complex to play. It's not new player friendly. Yes, they do put out the structure decks. You can buy 3 copies of the structure deck. Cool. So it's got reprints from decks that were much more relevant in the past. I would say the Chronicles deck, like the recent one that they put out, is maybe an exception to this. And the Blue Eyes deck, like, Konami is definitely making some steps to try to turn things around for themselves, because I think they're losing a lot of players, and people are just kind of getting frustrated with like, literally the Anaheim YCS. What the final round of it was determined by, okay, player one wins the roll, player one goes first, player two can't break his board, he scoops. Like, there was never a second turn played in any of the 3 games in that match. Then player two goes, he rolls the dice, he wins, player one can't do anything, player two wins, then player one gets to go first, and then he wins the die roll. Like, it's not a good game. And also, from a store's perspective, I have a very hard time, not even with the recent sealed product just being so bad that people don't want it. Like, I end up opening a decent amount of Yu-Gi-Oh product, but the singles themselves don't maintain any value. So when you reprint something and reprint something and reprint something and reprint something, eventually it goes to pennies. And that's great. Like, for people that want to play the game as cheaply as possible, there's nothing wrong with that. You're going to be playing outdated strategies. So Yu-Gi-Oh's season generally happens about a year after something is introduced in the following Megaton. For those that aren't familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like a compilation reprint set that they do every year. They've tried to spice that product up by including different rarities. So you can get Starlight rares, the Platinum Secret rares, all of the, like, 20 different rarities that Yu Gi Oh has. Those reprints are introduced in different rarities that make them somewhat chaseable. But for the most part, they reprint everything so hard that collections or maintaining an inventory of singles, for me, is just economic suicide. Like, there's no way. I'm not sure if we can actually say that word on stream. My bad, but
I think you can.
it's just it's not a good idea to open singles and then, like, there's no long-term collectability for the vast majority of Yu-Gi-Oh products. And I think they do themselves a disservice and do the players a disservice by doing that. And not that I think that cardboard should be treated as an investment vehicle. Like that causes its own brand of problems with TCG product when people are just hoarding it. Like Riftbound right now is absolutely horrible. You're paying $400 a box for booster boxes, and then that jacks up the price of most of the sync. Like it's it's a gong show. But again, there has to be a healthy balance between what Yu-Gi-Oh does, where they reprint everything all the time and everything eventually goes to zero. And then they're going to put out a new strategy in the following set. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, there's a set of secret rares that I need three of that are $90 a copy. So now I need to get those. They've introduced new hand traps. So now I need to get those. Like when Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring first came out, it was like $130 a copy. You need to have three of them, and you need to have them to play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. Like it's not possible to play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh without hand traps. So again, it created its own separate set of problems, and I think that Weebs of the Shore is doing the right thing by trying to find that balance that I keep talking about, where cards don't get reprinted down to zero. They don't just hand them out to you, but they're also not destroying reprint equity of future sets. So let's go back to talking about the Sylvie deck, right? So we got Mercurial Heart introduced the Sylvie Recollection deck, introduced the Tristan Recollection deck, and then the following set, Mortal Ambition, we got a Dungeon Guide reprint, right? So those cards were freely available in the booster boxes as well as the event packs, which you were talking about. And I understand that that's going away now, and I do agree with you on that point that the event
We have
packs
to
should
elaborate on that
contain.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
keep going.
essentially, they're changing the structure of the event packs. You're not getting cards from the most current set. You're getting a list of select reprints, which is also, in their defense, an opportunity to address shortages in cards, right? So the following set, maybe we're going to see Ghosts of Pendragon and Dungeon Guide and Dream Fairy and Frosthorn Paladin included as special arts in those event packs, or more likely, Radiant Origins is going to have all of those reprints that we need in them. So they've introduced a deck, Merlin, that wants to use Ghost of Pendragon. Didn't include them in there because, again, that destroys the reprint equity that they might try to put those into booster boxes or whatever. But the following set after, we're going to get those cards reprinted. I mean, I can't guarantee that those are going to be contained in it, but I'm fairly certain with what they were talking about doing the Looking Glass and doing Lost Providence. There's going to be GCR. There's going to be Quicksilver Grail. I guarantee you, we're going to get dungeon guides, maybe a whole suite of guides. Maybe we're going to get, Dream Fairy and Frostborn Paladin. Like I think you just kind of lost sight of what the grand scheme of things is going to be bringing us, specifically with the next set that comes out in 3 months.
I'm a bearish card buyer. I don't look at the possibility of the future. I look at the here and now. I have no idea. They're hinting that it's going to be really easy to pull those awesome cards. Okay, sweet. Well, you know what? When I see that, I can reevaluate the Merlin deck. But for right now, I would say it doesn't make any sense to me that Slimes is still to this day the best investment you can make for starting the Grand Archive. Besides maybe Star Declarade. If you could find Star Declarade, I actually think Star Declarade's much better as a Crux starter than the Merlin Recollection deck that just came out, because you could just print Clarent, and then you also have Spirit Blade Ascension and the Crux sites. Like, I don't know, man. I'd rather start. If you were like, oh, Billy, you have to start the Crux, I'd be like, all right, well, find me a Star Declarade. But yeah,
Well, and see, that's a good point. Like the recollection decks aren't aimed at new players as starter decks. There are actual starter decks for that, and I would argue that a
it's
lot of the starter
$80
decks are
though.
bad.
It's
They're bad,
$80 though.
but
Like, you need to be. If I'm an established player. I don't think this is worth it. I don't think Guoja and Dao Chan were worth it. They're $80. I could buy a starter deck and get some singles for that starter deck and have a stronger deck than the base recollection decks.
mm,
You
you
can
could
only.
also buy a recollection deck and buy a handful of singles, and then top regionals like I did with Guoja.
All right, look. I think we're both ready to move on. You did not like what I said in my title. Uh, so I said, yeah. So yeah, I think that's the perfect title. There is, was it really as bad as I said? So you could go ahead.
So again, I talked about this at the start. Like objectively, from a performance standpoint, the deck was bad, but I felt like I hadn't spent enough time with it to understand the mechanics of it, and the community itself hasn't had enough time to sit down and find all those interactions that are going to break the deck. But what I will say, and I think you can agree with me here, is that every single recollection deck we've had, those champions have gone on to be top tier competitive champions, right? So Sylvie, Tristan, Guoja, Diao Chan, all of them have gone on with the strategies that they introduced to be a powerhouse in the game. And I think Merlin is going to have the same thing, especially because she's Merlin, right? Like she was a terror when she was alive in the meta during Fractured Crown, continued all the way through for a while, still pokes her head up here once in a while, and I think is Silidar's favorite champion. So I don't see that Merlin is not going to have some sort of competitive success at some point in the future. But yeah, opening up the deck and playing with it straight out of the box, like it's not a starter deck. There's cards that it's expected that you're already going to have because it's aimed at more entrenched players, so to speak. So yeah, it's you're not going to go to a regionals with a freshly cracked recollection deck and win, right? Like again, what were you expecting to get out of that? Like, what were you expecting it to be out of the box?
Let me just go over the situation here, the Mike the situation from Jersey Shore here. The deck came out to supplement Crux, all right, to help out players to build to the Crux engine. That's how I take it. You take it as something else, and it did this at a time when the Crux deck's already the most expensive deck to build in Grand Archive right now. I mean, you have to get the Looking Glass, 4 Cheshire Cats. You need the Ghosts of Pendragons, and then if you're gonna play this deck, you better add on some of the Assassin engine with it, like Sadie. And then we find out, and I lucked out into this, okay? When I released this video, I had no idea this happened. As a matter of fact, I didn't even attack any YouTubers in my video per se. Like, I wasn't doing it to counter them, is what I'm saying. I had already predicted what they were going to say. I did not add to the script or add to the video in any way from when I first wrote it. And I wrote it before that Reddit article came out. And so what happened was this deck gets released. You need the most expensive stuff for it, and then it turns out they were short printing the Divine Relics, and they saved it. Then when they put that post like explaining that they were doing the reprints, that was after my video came out. So when my video came out at the time, I really do think it was one of the biggest mistakes in trading card game history. Like the community crashed out about this. It wasn't like people were just happy about it and were silent about it. Like everyone's like, yeah, the Merlin deck's not that strong. She's helping out. She's supplementing the deck that's tier one already. That's the most expensive already. And then we find out there's a bunch of short prints happening.
Yeah, and
How
I
could it
can
be
agree
worse?
with the short printing. Like
How
that
could it be
that's definitely a
worse?
problem.
How could that situation be any worse? I don't think I'm wrong. How could it have been? What was I wrong about?
Well, I don't think that like I definitely agree that the short printing was an issue, right? So I opened up like what 5 or 6 cases of distorted reflections, and we ended up seeing I think 2 or 3 looking glass the entire time. Did not get a Lost Providence in my Phantom Monarchs. Granted, I opened a smaller amount of that set, so I had to
How much
go
did
out
you
and
open
buy
up?
one. So I opened 2 cases of Phantom Monarchs,
Just two
and
cases that I didn't get it. Yep.
well, and I've talked about this in my videos too on my channel, where I think that the rarity distribution in Grand Archive definitely needs some tuning. So A, they should
Ugh.
be making sure that stuff isn't getting short printed. Yes, totally agree. B, I think that the rarity distribution in boxes needs to be adjusted so that like even opening what I say 5 or 6 cases of distorted reflections, that's what it took just for me to get a complete playset of all of the stuff. Now, granted, I've got you guys as my community at the store. I sell you singles, so it's not just for me to open to get cards. Like, yes, but also like we as a community are collectively working our way through that card pool. But on the other side of the coin, I think you're kind of putting all of your eggs in one basket by saying, all right, well, I need to have the Looking Glass and I need to have Cheshire Cats, which by the way were again as low as $17 when that set first released because people hadn't discovered their full competitive potential. And that's always the case with any trading card game. There's sleepers, cards that are dirt cheap when they come out, and then somebody finds a way to abuse it, and then all of a sudden it goes crazy. But it's not required to have the Looking Glass to play competitive Grand Archive. It's required maybe to play the latest and greatest Recollection deck at full competitive power. But again, Guoja still very much a powerhouse in the meta. Like I swept you guys with her the other day. No Looking Glass in there. No Ghost of Pendragon required. No Sadie. No Dungeon Guide. It's a level one aggro deck. Like, and I think this was kind of a general theme in your video that I disagreed with, is that like you don't have to have the latest and greatest short printed divine relic to play a competitive Grand Archive. Like if you want to build stuff and experiment, yeah, it's cool to have all of that stuff. And then I would argue, just get the cards when they come out, and then you have them, and then when they spike in price, you don't have to deal with that. That's my strategy. I just complete the set when it launches. And I understand not everybody has the ability to, invest in the game to the same extent that I do, but it proofs you from having to deal with those price shocks when cards eventually become broken and get abused.
Okay, how do you think this game is going to realistically deal with the price creep? Because that was another theme of my video, and that's another reason I think these recollection decks need to be better. How do you get the price down? Because this is the problem Grand Archive has, is we're at that 2 year mark, and that's a magic number for people who don't play trading card games, like, sorry, that don't play the big three in trading card games. Generally speaking, a game will die after 2 years because of the exact same problem we're having now with prices. I don't
So
think.
I think we're going into year three of Grand Archive. Actually, we're past the 2 year mark. And also, like to answer your question blatantly, Radiant Origins is a reprint set that's coming out in 3 months in 2026. So we're going to be getting tons of reprints to bring the price of all of those competitive staples down.
Well, state.
Again, Weebs is not a faceless corporation that doesn't care about their players. They immediately, when the player base was like, "Hey, what's the deal with these cards? Why are we having so much trouble?" They said, "Look, you know what? We're just going to throw them in with the next set. Here's what we're going to do to make sure that people that already got these cards are not going to be devalued, so they're not going to be the full art ultra rares that we were getting from Phantom Monarchs, but they're throwing those cards in, and I think you're going to see the price of the core set of staples that people are wanting access to. So again, Frostworn Paladin, which really isn't that expensive. Dream Fairy, really not that expensive anymore. So like 18 bucks. Um, Grand Crusader's Ring is an expensive card, but I would also argue that it's not something you need a play set of,
It's
and it
down to
goes
fifty
into
dollars.
basically, yeah, and it so you need one, and it goes into basically every single deck. So the amount of utility that you get for that $50 is incredible. And I would argue, like, I can't, like, I'm sure you guys can see, I can't look on my computer right now, but I would challenge you to pull up, let's say, pull up the most recent Ascent winning deck from Grand Archive. And then let's take a look at the deck that won the most recent Yu Gi Oh! YCS. Let's take a look at the top deck that won the most recent Magic, whatever they're doing right now, Magic Fest, or I don't know if they're doing Pro Tour Qualifier or whatever. Riftbound, let's look up the most recent winning Riftbound deck and see where Grand Archive actually falls in the grand scheme of things in terms of building TCGs. So there's definitely games that are more expensive and games that are cheaper. And I think Grand Archive is in a sweet spot for the cost of building a reasonably competitive deck.
I don't think it is. I
If
disagree. I think it's in the higher tier. And like I said before, Yu Gi Oh! Has so many reprints with tins that somebody could have got stuff really cheap and then it got expensive. Like, because that game doesn't have rotation. I don't think people understand that as much. And that's kind of my problem with Grand Archive is it's like, we had the Sylvie deck for budget. Sorry, you know what? Anything before, let's say, I think prices the price creep started Mortal Ambition. If you look at the game's prices for getting competitive decks before that, I mean, for the first half of its life, it really wasn't that bad. But we had a bunch of SR creep, a bunch of UR creep, and suddenly stuff started, like you said, Dream Fairy started getting pushed out. A bunch of the water stuff, like the Decree, started to get in there. They rose in price. It's here's my thing, okay? Either do a rotation like Magic and Pokemon, or do constant reprints like Yu-Gi-Oh. If you don't want to do it as bad as Yu-Gi-Oh, you don't have to. But I am saying like stuff like Dungeon Guide could definitely be put into decks. We cannot be like having our cake and eat it too. You cannot tell me that cards could just get a reprint and that it temporarily solves a problem. I'm sure Dungeon Guide. Are you going to agree with me this here or not? Like, listen to this. This is my little prediction for what's going to happen with Radiant Origins. The dungeon guide for Mortal Ambition is probably going to drop to 10 to 15 bucks because I'm pretty sure dungeon guide's going to be in Radiant.
Okay, so what's your threshold for an affordable single? Like, what price do you want to see Dungeon Guide at? Not for
Ooh,
yourself because you have a playset, but for, let's say you're trying to bring a new player into the game. What do you think is a reasonable price for a set of Dungeon Guides
10 to 15.
for the whole set?
Oh no, per. So I'd
Oh,
say,
okay. So
yeah,
perfect. So then Radiant Oranges,
Radiant Origins.
Radiant
Yep.
Origins Radiant Origins is going to solve the problem and bring those cards into the price that you yourself find reasonable.
Yeah,
And again, everybody's budget's different, right? Like I can afford to just go out and buy the complete, like whatever I don't get from my booster boxes. I can just buy all that stuff. But I agree. I think $10 to $15 for a playset of Dungeon Guides is pretty reasonable, and that's considering that it'll be on its what? So we got Kickstarter, we got Dawn of Ash's Prelude, I think, had dungeon guides in it. There was the promo dungeon guides,
yep.
then Dawn of Ash's Altar, then we got Mortal Ambition, plus all of the event packs from Dawn of Ashes had the potential to get. So there's a lot of dungeon guides out there
If you want
in
to,
the grand scheme of things.
if you want to cool off the market, you need to reprint some stuff in recollection decks, in starter decks. Like, it doesn't. Okay, here's my thing. Let's say they banned Ghost of Pendragon. Let's just say they did that, okay? The card value would plummet. So, like, okay, how many? There's been like what, 5 recollection decks? And to be fair to me, I think the only thing that they could have reprinted in Sylvie and Tristan that would have been relevant at the time was Dungeon Guide. So let's say they reprinted one thing, just one card in a recollection deck, just one. That would be less cards than what appears on the ban list right now.
But then there's also the reprint equity of future sets, right? So let's say, okay, we got those recollection decks, and people are like, oh man, I really need dungeon guides. Hey, guess what? We're putting out Mortal Ambition in the next couple of months here, and then there's going to be dungeon guides in that set so you can get your hands on them. Like it encourages people to want to be, okay, well, even if I don't care about any of the other strategies in Mortal Ambition, I'm going to buy that because I want those dungeon guides. And then again, that increases the available card pool for other people to buy singles because people are opening that product to chase those specific cards. And
Here's
the
the
event packs. Again, you guys can like there was a couple of you guys that completed your play sets at Dungeon Guides just off of the event packs and the one booster box that you got, right? So I
yeah,
don't think card accessibility is a problem per se.
I
I think
do.
that the cards are at a decent price. Dungeon Guide specifically, like there are obviously obscenely expensive cards. I don't think Cheshire Cat needs to be an $80 card. I think that's completely ridiculous. And I don't want to see cards get up into that
Well, they're there.
high price range because, well, sure they are, and again, that's I think going to be addressed with Radiant Oranges.
Oranges, yeah. Okay, so Liminal Guide needed to be like right now it's $60, right? You
Yep.
understand what I'm saying here though? Like, you have to do in order to get these prices lower. Okay, if Ghost of Pendragon
How many
was
games have
in,
you played with Liminal Guide? How many games have you used Liminal Guide in?
no, I've used like two or three. I have a one of it.
So you have one. You used it in like a handful of games.
Yeah,
So would you say that your competitive experience with Grand Archive has been extremely negatively impacted by the fact that you don't have three more liminal guides because they're incredibly expensive? Or would you say that they're part of a niche strategy, especially after Rile the Abyss got banned? Like those cards are basically, I wouldn't say useless. Like people are still using them in some strategies, but they're basically an Alice card at this point.
I don't know about that because Fire Slimes runs it. So I lost my Fire Slimes. Um, my Wind Wake Up got ruined because now it's completely outclassed by Wind Wake Up that has the Looking Glass. Like my deck here's like the problem I have. Okay, I brought this up to you before. My deck options have been shrinking, and in Yu-Gi-Oh, if I bought the structure decks, they would be increasing. But that's not been the case with Grand Archive, where a lot of these decks I bought, like Woja just sits on the shelf because like it's so expensive for me to have to go after that, but constantly keep up to date the rest of the decks. And I just think for $80, like I should be getting more value. And like, you know what? We can't be right or wrong. Like neither of us are going to be 100% right or wrong. And if you actually read the community's thoughts on this, everybody is all over the place on what should happen. Like there's no good solution right now. But I don't agree with you that I think the balance is really bad right now because, and you're like, okay, Radiant Origins will solve that. I will talk about that when Radiant Origins comes out because I don't know. Right. When the event packs come out, for all I know, the event packs could have Ghost of Pendragon as well, and that might actually bring the temporarily bring it down enough for a new player to join in. But my whole thing is this is what this is where I kind of want to like if you have anything to say after this, that's fine. Or a different topic about the Merlin thing, that's fine. This is where I kind of want to end it. Was my little compromise was releasing it in event packs, but really, I think if they can't do the recollection decks, they should just be making like a tin like product. You know, have little like Yu-Gi-Oh, like and any card game, they all have tins, right? They all have tins. Put Ghost of Pendragon in a freaking tin. I'll buy 4 of them for $50. You know, I get a couple of booster packs with it, and then the price will only go down temporarily. It'll go back up. Give it a few months, it'll go back up.
Yeah, and again, I think Radiant Origins is going to solve the problem that we're having with a lot of these really expensive cards. So I feel like ultimately, like, and just to kind of give some context here, like, let's be real and let's tell the players what actually happened behind the scenes, right? So, or the viewers rather, like, Billy was about ready to quit Grand Archive
Yeah,
over the fact that there was no Ghost of Pendragon available to him. But even
no,
before that, he didn't want to play the Merlin deck to begin with. So he was upset that he wasn't going to get a reprint for cards that he didn't need for a deck that he said he wasn't going to play. That we argued over whether or not it was even going to be good before it launched. I thought, and again, like I brought this up early in the video, I said that every single champion we've gotten in a recollection deck, the strategy that they've introduced the game has produced some strong competitive results. So I don't think that this Merlin deck is going to be an exception. I think it's going to do well once people figure it out. Once maybe we get a little bit of support, more people get access to the cards. But I just thought I thought it was crazy that you're so like crashed out over. I'm not getting Ghost of Pendragon. I don't need them because I'm not playing this deck because I'm not going to buy this deck because I don't want to play it. But I'm super mad about this card that doesn't affect me at all.
I'm not going to be a sucker like the budget players who got Dao Chan. If you got Dao Chan, her cards that you paid for don't splash into anything else. So you're
Guess
screwed,
what?
buddy.
Dao Chen was amazing. Dao Chen was
She was
amazing with
great.
her
She sucks
fractal
now.
strategy at level one.
She's not
With
great.
mostly dirt cheap cards.
They were not mostly dirt cheap. Way of Peace was like $30. A lot of them were doing that stupid penguin fractal thing to mill people out. She was not 30. And you know what? Like I said, a lot of those cards don't splash to anything else. So if you were budget
Zhang
and you
Jiao was like the
invested,
most expensive card in that deck. No dungeon guides, right? No dungeon
no,
guides
yeah,
needed.
no
It's a
dungeon
level
guide.
one
No,
deck.
her cost
First
was
Asunder, dirt cheap. That was a
her
common.
cost was
First
about the
Asunder was a
same.
common.
Her cost was about the same as every other competitive deck. I did math it out back then, and you know what? Like I said, if you were a budget player and you're playing right now, you're just scrambling to get something else. Have fun getting Luxem. You're going to be playing. If you're a budget player, you have to switch. You're going to Luxem because the Lightweaver's Assault's in the new event pack. So that's what you're going for.
So speaking of budget players, here's
Okay.
something that we haven't touched on at all.
Okay.
With Radiant Origins, we're getting a new format, right? So there's going to be a more casual oriented format that I think is going to go a long way to bring more people into the game without having to worry about playing those expensive staples because they're probably not going to be usable in that format to begin with. There's going to be some kind of either like points or something like Yu-Gi-Oh did with Genesis or the way Commander works or some kind of a ban list or like a rarity restriction like with Silver Age and Flesh and Blood or Pauper and Magic. Like there's going to be this new format. I think is also going to go a long way to allow people to play competitively within. Like yeah, it's a casual format, but still you're going to be competitive within that casual format, right? And I think that that's also going to help a lot of people get into a game where or a format specifically where budget doesn't have as big of an impact on whether or not you can compete. And I can agree full heartedly that I don't want to have any of my players in our group or anybody that wants to play Grand Archive. I don't want people to be restricted by budget. So I agree that there's cards that are out of control price wise. I agree that Weebs needs to do something about that, which I think they are with this new reprint set. And I don't want to play against budget. I want to play against skill. So new format, reprint set. I don't think these cards need to be put into any sort of introductory product because I think that like you got to be careful with reprints because you don't want to drive cards that people have paid a lot of money for down to zero, right?
They
Like
get
if I have
banned.
dungeon guides that are $100 a set, okay, sure, yeah.
You're gonna have to expect
Oh,
fluctuations in a trading card game here, player. Like they're gonna get banned. Ghost of Pendragon could very well be banned because I see them trying to ban uh, the assassin dagger thing. That you pay the one prep to bring it out because they think Ghost is gonna abuse it. Hey, dummies! The Looking Glass is there. It does the exact same thing. And for those of you who are like, you can't target, it has Omni Shroud. Ghost of Pendragon's bounce effect doesn't target.
yes, bans do affect the value. Like I had a real good time with
Icebound Slam.
Icebound Slam when I bought that card off of Braylon. I knew it was going to get banned. I
I don't
bought
know
it
why you
off
did
Braylon
that.
because he's a kid, and
Yeah.
because he's a kid, he
He
wanted
lucked
some
out
cash to
twice
buy
because he got
cards.
rid of his Beseech the Winds too at that last ascent, and then it was announced it's reprint in the event pack. I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
Two
good,
times.
good on him.
Yeah.
But okay, and so that's another point. The value of cards needs to be maintained to an extent because what are we playing? We're playing a TCG, and what does TCG stand for? It's a trading card game. So at the end of the day, we want to be opening product and then trading cards around to get the stuff that we need, which we do every single release. I trade with Don, I trade with you guys. I want your foils, you want the stuff that I have. Like that aspect of it can't be overlooked too, where it's not just like a gotcha where you pay to win and hope for the best for your pulls and stuff. Like you can trade and get stuff you want, stuff you need. And that's part of a TCG community. It's right there, TCG trading card game.
Uh-huh. So the balance sucks. I mean, if we're trying to balance, if we have like the balance effect for Grand Archive, we're playing with like a third of the card in a hand. So we'll never be balanced. Because we're talking about balance where the prices keeps going up and up and up and inflating. And yes, I'm not I think we're arguing in circles because we keep bringing up Radiant Origins, but I'm going to say I hope they do switch the event packs back because that was another point against Merlin. You bought Merlin, you had no way of supplementing her. So I think people we didn't touch on this enough where when the event pack comes out, because it was based around the current set and they changed it, you the new Merlin cards are in the current set like Phantom Monarchs, but you don't get any Phantom Monarch cards. You're getting a bunch of reprints instead. So if you're like new and you're looking to grind for a deck, you're better off buying like a starter deck and just grinding for Luxem because
So
Lightweave's a
first of
self-similar.
all, if you're any sort of experience with TCGs at all, like buying singles is the best way to build a deck
I don't. You can
versus
grind.
whatever product. Sure, you can grind, but the most efficient and budget friendly way to build a deck is to just buy singles. Everybody knows that. That's the advice that you get. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I
I
want to
say
get
that too.
started in this game. What product should I open? But one thing
I
that
don't know
I
about.
do want to talk about before I forget that I wanted to mention is and a big pro for Grand Archive and a big potential draw for why people should consider playing the game is unlike games like Riftbound and Magic and Pokemon, Grand Archive product does not get scalped. So, from as a store owner, my perspective, when a new set is announced and goes up for pre-order through distribution, I can go onto the website. I can order as much of it as I want. I get as much of it as I ask for, and there is plenty of product available to go around at a reasonable price. Like boxes are not super expensive. It's cheaper to buy a Grand Archive box than it is basically any other TCG except for Yu-Gi-Oh, which again, there's that whole slew of problems that are coming along with that, and that's going to change because now Yu-Gi-Oh is getting like serialized full art, all these crazy changes that Konami is starting to make. But Grand Archive doesn't suffer from the same kind of scalping and scarcity issues that other TCGs suffer from. So, plus, like, I think every case that we had of Phantom Monarchs and every case that we had of Distorted Reflections, and even all the way back to, like, you guys can go through on my channel and look at all the stuff I've opened. I've hit a lot of value cards. So, if you're the kind of person that likes to grind packs to get your stuff, or even if you just want to open Grand Archive, there's a good incentive to do that in the CSRs, the collector ultra rares, and the foils and stuff. Like foils are actually hard to get. It's not like every pack is a foil. You get like 3 foils tops per box. Like Weebs is doing a lot of things right. Sure, there's some expensive cards, but on the flip side, no scalping, foils are fun to pull. There's good value that you can like. I've funded my entire journey on Grand Archive of just selling CSRs. Like the game has basically been a net zero for me to play, which is sweet. So it's got a lot going for it in that regard. I just wanted to say something about that before I forgot about it.
Okay, I also want to point out that what people could say I did a clickbaity title, but I also did clickbaity titles like that was positive for this game, like when I recapped the World Championships. So it's a two-way street. I'm just a YouTuber and I'm trying to get monetized. Like that's just even when I'm monetized, I'm gonna keep doing clickbait titles. It's just YouTube, guys. I don't know what to say here. Like people were really offended by the title. I'm just like, it got you to click.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the point, right? But I feel like you got to put out quality content too. You can't just do shock and awe. Like it's got to be. But
Again, I
here
did the
we are
shock. I
having a
did
debate
shock
about
it
it.
when I did
So
shock and awe, and that was positive to the game. Nobody says a thing, but when it's negative, all of a sudden it's a problem. That's just how it is. It's just how it's gonna be.
yeah, well, I mean, if you look at Alpha Investments channel, every single title that he puts up is clickbait. It's the end of the world. Pokemon's going to zero. Magic is going to zero. Like it works, right? So whatever.
Yeah,
I
no.
just honestly enjoyed having the opportunity to come on and chat with you. I think we should do this more. It's fun.
Well, we can do it. Why don't we do it before the release? Like when we get spoiled fully on Radiant Oranges, we'll talk
Radiant
about the fruit.
Oranges.
Yeah, we'll talk about the fruit basket. You know what kind of apples to oranges are the type of cards. So make sure to check out Johnny's channel, Retro Play Games. We'll talk to you guys later.